Hi everyone. My name is Helena Brantley, and I work with scholars, publishers, and subject experts. I do business as Red Pencil Publicity and Marketing, and I'm based here in the Bay Area, in Alameda. I'm really delighted to be able to facilitate this conversation about untraditional publishers and publishing with Rebecca Borucki, and Joanna from Barrett Kohler. We have 40 minutes, and we agreed that we're going to leave 10 minutes at the end. I wanted to thank Julie Lattenberg for the invitation to be part of the panel and the invitation to moderate. Let me just say really quickly that Row House Publishing is based in New Jersey, and Barrett Kohler is based in Oakland, and after years here in San Francisco. And I wanted to start our conversation. We'll get into the nitty-gritty, but I wanted to start us with talking about and getting to know you through the books that have impacted you both in some way. So can you start by telling us two books that have in some way been significant in your lives personally, as a way of helping us get a sense of who you are and what you value?
Soul on Ice by Eldridge Cleaver. Of course.
No way.
Of course. And I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, Dr. Maya Angelou.
When Corporations Rule the World by David Corton. This is a Barrett Kohler publication. When I read it back in 2004, I was actually working for another much more corporate company, and the way he pulled all the critiques of capitalism together was a big inspiration for me to jump to Barrett Kohler. More recently, a book I found super helpful is The Stoic Challenge. Last couple of years have been pretty rough, and I found that book very helpful in terms of thinking about obstacles that you're encountering and how to turn them into opportunities or even games, things to overcome. And it has a lot of similarities, interestingly, with Buddhism. Very helpful book if you're struggling and looking to become more resilient.
So now tell us, if you would, a little bit about two books that you have published or will publish that gives us a sense of your respective houses.
The first is General Adult Trade, Are We Free Yet? A Black Queer Guide to Divorcing America. Very, very, very excited about this book. And one from our children's imprint, Wheat Penny Press, called A Day with No Words, written by a Black autistic mother of two Black autistic boys. It's a picture book. It's gorgeous. It's a celebration, and I'm ecstatic to be publishing it.
The first one I would mention is this book, Stewardship by Peter Block. You may know Peter Block as an author of Flawless Consulting, but he also does a lot of books with Barrett Kohler. The subtitle is Choosing Service Over Self-Interest. It's a really foundational book in Barrett Kohler's culture, one of the first books we published. And it makes the case that organizations need to be founded and organized in such a way that they equitably compensate all the different stakeholders who contribute to the success of the organization. So a lot of publishing companies are run for the benefit of the shareholders or the highest executives. If you apply this message to publishing companies, you need to take account into staff at all levels. You need to take into account authors, service providers, printers, freelancers, the local community, local environment. If you take any of those out of the equation, you don't really have a publishing company. So that's been, it's a book that our founder made everybody read before you get hired into the company, so it's kind of in our lingo. Much more recently is a book by Sonia Renee Taylor, The Body is Not an Apology. This is a book called with the power of radical self-love. It's if you take a quick glance at it, you think it's like, oh, overcoming fat phobia, but it's not that. It's a whole systemic analysis of the ways in which we, as a society, shame our bodies, make ourselves small, make others small based on and it makes the case that if we take this really radical thinking, it can be transformative for the individual, for the community, and for society as a whole. I'm very proud it made it onto the New York Times bestseller list last year, so yay.
One thing I want to say to you in the audience about these two houses, first of all, it's just been fun to learn about you personally and the work that you all do. And I think that I would encourage people to really look at their websites, because one of the things that I think you both do really well is to use video to tell people who you are, what you do, who you publish, why you publish. So if you have some time, I would really encourage you to look at how these two houses are using video, and I think a really effective way. So now let's talk a little bit about your respective models and your houses and your mission, and unpack a little bit your purpose. How are your profit models untraditional or non-traditional for most houses?
Well, our model, we call it the 40-40 model, which is in tribute to the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to, I believe you are descended from enslaved Africans. We talked about this on the call, to our ancestors and then rescinded. So it's a $40,000 advance, flat advance for all of our authors, regardless of the size of the platform, and also a 40% royalty share.
Wait. Say that again.
$40,000 advance and a 40% royalty share. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Which means I make a little bit less, right? Which is totally cool with me because I have the privilege of working with phenomenal authors, telling phenomenal stories. We've removed, hopefully, all of the gatekeeping of traditional publishing in terms of having to be agented. From the books that I named as my most influential books in my life, the books that radicalized me, the stories that changed my life came from the hood, right? And none of my homies have agents or have access to agents. So we're really trying to reach as many people as possible. And just in terms of accessibility, and I know I'm going a little bit off the question, but that's what it's about. Like, our profit model is about most people sharing the profit and having access to the money. Even our submissions process, it's like, if you're neurodivergent, if you have trouble reading all these words, like, please reach out to us and we will schedule a video so that you can present your book. Like, we just want good stories to get out there. And right now we see too many boundaries. And we want our authors to get paid, right? Because it costs a lot of money to write a book and to take time out to write a book. So, and to promote it.
Sure. So I got a little nervous when I read the panels about profitability, because I was like, I'm on the wrong panel here. Eric Kohler is not, swimming in traditional profitability, and that's actually never really been our goal. As I mentioned, our goal is about making sure that we have at least enough to make sure that all of the people who contribute to the success of the organization get their due back. We lead with our mission. Our mission is connecting people and ideas to create a world for all. It informs every book we choose. It informs who we hire. It's a big attractor for staff to come to us. It's a big attractor for authors to come to us. We are owned by all of our stakeholders. The staff owns some of the company. Authors have bought into the company. Our service providers. As well as just customers. And they're there, frankly, because of the mission, not because they expect the stock to double. We are both a B Corp and a benefit corporation, which means we have willingly gone through these assessment programs to make sure that we're having external evaluations of whether or not we're doing all the things we claim to do about how we're treating our various stakeholders. And those B Corp assessments are not easy to pass, I can tell you that.
And you guys have a book on that.
Yes, we do have a book on B Corps. Some of the things, when we started out as a company, a lot of people thought we were kind of kooky. All the advances are the same, not as big as yours, but yeah, they're all the same. We didn't used to offer advances at all, and then I don't know, less than 10 years ago, I think we started offering $5,000, whether you're a $1 million, million unit selling, returning author, brand new author, it's all the same. I mean, I think we could argue that's equality but not equity, and kind of problematic in some ways, but it's still fairly radical. Authors can cancel the contract at any time for any reason. We want to make sure that they're there because they want to be there, and not because they have a contractual gun to their head. And I can think of, we just turned 30 this year, I can think of one instance in which an author walked who we didn't want to walk. I mean, we parted mutually amicably on many occasions, but only once did we really not want it to happen, and the agent forced it. So, everybody knows what everyone makes. The salary schedule is public. We do everything we can to keep it as compressed as possible, so that currently the differential between the lowest and the highest employee is, I think, 2.75. But it's not as radical as the person who wasn't here. Everybody gets paid the same in that company, right? I think. Who was the other panelist who was going to be here?
Oh, Ramsey from Penny Press, yes.
Yeah.
Everybody makes the same.
I think everybody makes exactly the same. So I was all patting myself on the back so right now. All our HR policies are up for a vote by staff. We do everything really transparently, really collectively. Staff can attend any of the management team meetings they want to. We also really want our authors talking to each other. A lot of publishing companies don't want that. They're worried that they'll be, figuring out somebody got a bigger event and the other a bigger marketing budget. We have the absolute opposite inclination. The best thing that can happen is when our authors team up with other authors. And we've actually helped the formation of a nonprofit organization that's a Baracola Authors Inc. It's a separate organization of our authors, it's like a cooperative. And they mentor each other. They have an annual marketing workshop that sells out every year. They have an annual retreat that's very popular. They cross-promote each other's books. They do water coolers together. It's a really wonderful community. Writing is a very lonely job. And it's just one of the things that we found has been super helpful in getting authors really engaged in the community and wanting to stay. And also the biggest source of new projects that come to us aren't from agents, they aren't over the transom. It's other authors, our authors recommending us because they had such a good experience with the company or the authors cooperative. They're just very, I've worked for 4 different companies, and this is a publishing company, definitely the most author-friendly company I've ever worked for. We have a signature author day where it used to happen in the before times in person. We would fly the author to the office, and we'd have all-day meetings, editorial, marketing, digital, covers, production, and then the authors would present to staff, invite guests on the topic of their book. This was about 6 months before the book came out, and it was just a great opportunity for the author to get embedded in the whole organization as opposed to just only talking to their editor, and for the staff to get a preview from the horse's mouth on what the book's going to be. There's no better advocate for that, so it's a great way to kind of get everybody on the same team. And now we do it virtually, which has some downsides, but I'd say the fact that now authors can invite many more people than they could. The fire alarm on our office was like 60 people, and we've had like 120, 150 people show up. I mean, it's like a great marketing launch for the book. So those are some ways in which Baracola has kind of a quirky business model.
Sounds awesome.
It is, and that author day is such a beautiful thing to be part of. So Rebecca, all of the press around the money that you've raised from crowdsourcing and from venture.
No venture.
No venture?
Nah, we don't, nah.
Oh, so tell us that, what is it, 1.1?
1.2.
1.2. Tell us how you got there.
We asked for it.
Okay.
We're mission-based. So we went out in February of, what year is it? 2022. So we went out in February 21, and basically asked all our friends on social media. Well, I was formerly with Hay House. I was an author with Hay House. And it was at a conference in May 2018. So I'm black biracial, very light skinned, light presenting, whatever, ambiguous presenting.
Like my mom.
And we look like this too. And I was at a conference in May 2018, and I stood up and I asked the CEO at the end of the conference, like, why am I the brownest person in this room? And what am I supposed to say to my people when I go back to them? Because I do not feel comfortable here. I do not feel welcome here. And he said, you have to understand, Rebecca, that we cater to an affluent audience. So I was like, well, that's not me. You pay me well, but not that well. And it was downhill from there. So finally, after 2020 and George Floyd and 5 of the 12 disinformation dozen being Hay House authors, I had to go to the leadership and say, what are we going to do about this? And they said, well, there's nothing we can do. And that's absolutely untrue. They were perfectly poised and positioned to do something. So I left, and I had the invitation to start my own thing. So we're babies, like we're brand new babies, and I didn't have any money. So I went out on social media with a couple people that left Hay House in solidarity, and we said, look, we want to do this really radical thing. We think authors should get paid. We think black, brown, queer, and disabled authors should get paid. We want to make books for us, by us, but for everyone to read. And it was like a really nerdy thing, and I didn't think people were going to be hype on it, but we had over 1,300 donors and investors show up, from $1 to $100,000, regular folks. And we raised that $1.2 million in 10 months. So that seeded our first 2 years, really, of acquisitions. We had some really amazing, very successful authors sign on, including Juliet Diaz from Hay House. And it was because of our mission. Our mission statement is cred. We do the whole row house. If you're not familiar, it's like a little brick house. It's on the east, very mid-Atlantic. I grew up in one. It's very tribal, it's very community, the way I grew up. My parents were good people, but not awesome parents. So it was a neighbor that really took us in, fed us, and raised us, my Aunt Kathy. And I wanted the house to feel like that. We're really here for each other, lifting each other up, showing up in community for each other. And they did just that. So we have these authors, Juliet could go anywhere and get multiple 6 figures. And she's like, I don't even care what you're doing, just sign me up. And that's been the spirit of a lot of the authors that have come our way. So we have this cred commitment, street cred, community responsibility, equity, disruption, the buzzword. And people loved it. I don't think a single mom from Michigan has ever written a $20 check to Penguin, right? I don't think that happens, but she was doing it for us. And what's really beautiful about that is that now we have this built-in community. So when we release a new book, it's we have these 1,300 people. We have this street team. All of our books are available online. You go to rowhousepublishing.com, you hit bookshelf, you sign up for our little street team, we give you a password. You can read the whole book, it's right there. All of our galleys are available to everybody. We want everything to be completely accessible. Simon & Schuster, our distributor, doesn't love that, but whatever. So they just, people just wanted things to be fair. They didn't care what industry it was. And so we have this community that buys our books no matter what. They share them. They're fanatical about it. I don't remember what the question was. Oh, the money. Yeah. And they continue. People continue to just send us checks, right? And that's a beautiful thing. It's not a lie, of course. It's not what it used to be. But I think that this idea, if you're in business and you do good business, people are going to appreciate you. They're going to show up for you. Our model is not a fundraising model. We're not nonprofit. People know that we're for profit. We want to compete. We want to force the hand of bigger publishers. We want them to do better. We look at Barrett Kohler and we're like, oh, what are they doing that we can upgrade, right? We want a fat black queer woman to walk into Penguin Random House and say, look what they're doing over there. So it's been the press part of it, and getting all the press has also been a really big important thing. We need to get on national platforms and say what we're doing and being completely transparent to make authors know that this is what they can get and deserve. And I would love for them to come back and say, we went here and they did better, and now we want this from you.
Right, because I remember reading that you said you really want to compete with the big boys.
Of course. And I think that that's where indies get it wrong a lot. I think they think that the principles gotta keep them small, right? And I think that we can keep our principles and our values and get really, really, really big and influential, and then we spread it around. Like, I'm trying to be the Jay-Z of publishing, right? Like, that's, my partner, she's white, so she calls herself the Eminem. But like, we're trying to do big things, and we can't do that being an outsider. Like, I gotta be at the table. I gotta bring my table that my ancestors built, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that, even reading through your, watching your website, reading through it, it's beautifully done. But also reading your Instagram post when you decided to leave Hay House.
Yeah.
As someone who worked for HarperCollins, and has many friends who work for big houses. If you really try to understand the heart of what you do, I think that post is really eye-opening.
You went way back.
I sure did.
I didn't think anyone was gonna read that. I posted at like 9 p.m. on a Wednesday.
It's a very thoughtful and candid piece about why you left. And I think intentions and motivations for things are really important. So I think it was thoughtful. It wasn't like you just decided you were going to rant. You clearly put some thought into what you wanted to say.
I am a Black, biracial, autistic, was a teen mom no longer. I have 5 children that I raised the hard way. Grandmother on October 19th. I decided to have a baby. To think that, books saved my life. And to think that there was an effort, a concerted effort, and an ideology behind that, like, we're not interested in you unless you have money. It was unacceptable to me on levels that were like, it was like life and death, right? So if my people aren't invited here, I don't want to be here, and I don't even think you should exist, because this is about information, this is about sharing love, this is about sharing stories, about moving us forward. So, yeah.
Well, that reminds me in a way of the story about how Barrett Kohler came to be. That really reads like fiction on the BK site. You want to tell us about Steve Parsante?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about Steve. Steve's our founder. He started Barrett Kohler in 1992, but before that he was he worked his way up from a copywriter up to president of Josie Bass here in San Francisco. And the company was at that time owned by Macmillan. Macmillan, parent company, was having a bit of a hard year and insisted on 10% layoffs across the entire organization, even though Josie Bass was performing significantly above plan for its own goals. Steve refused to do it. He flew out to meet with Maxwell, I guess, and was summarily fired on the spot, and he refused to do it. So he went home, and the next day, a bunch of authors started calling him, printers started calling him, suppliers started calling him, saying, "You got to start a new company. We really believe in what you were trying to do there. We'll front you the money. We'll take lower royalties if we need to make this happen. But we really believe in the kind of company you want to have in the world." And so they signed up like right away, including Peter Block and Margaret Wheatley, some really big names in very forward-thinking circles. So he brought that kind of value to everything we do at Barrett Kohler. We've had a couple of times in the course of the history of the company where we've actually had to, like 2008, we needed to take, the business book market took a real beating, and we decided collectively that we weren't going to do any layoffs. Instead, we were going to take pay cuts, except at the lowest levels of the organization. And then we did that again in 2020, made a collective decision that the most important thing was to keep people attached to the firm, attached to their health care. We found a program, California Work Sharing, where we could reduce people's hours, and some of it would be made up by unemployment, California unemployment. Didn't make it up all the way, so people did take a hit. But we collectively decided that was more important than throwing anybody over over the side of the ship. So, those are values that started with Steve, and taking care of each other, doing everything we can to support one another in tough times. And I think it's a big part of why an unusual little company like this with very narrow profit margins has managed to survive for so long, because we're willing to sacrifice. And authors also, some authors were willing to take, the printers went for extended terms, some authors delayed royalties, so the community really came together. And then the next year when things got better, we actually managed to raise almost $2 million in funding. So in the middle of a pandemic. So and these are strangers, these are people who know Bear Kohler, want the mission to work, things like that. But it goes back to the blueprint that Steve set for the company.
One of the questions I had for you, Rebecca, is around your company has been around for 2 years. And tell us how many, just give us a sense. I mean, I'm thinking about your catalog, which is so beautifully done on your site, where you can just very easily go through and get a sense of who you're publishing and when. There's one book that is something about eating at the table on a budget.
Oh, break bread on a budget.
Beautiful title. But I'm trying to get a sense of when and where we can get your books.
What do you mean? When
Publishing cycle. Your first book's published when?
February. Oh, okay. So we have the children's, and so February was our first adult title.
Okay.
The Altar Within. Simon & Schuster's our sales and distribution partner.
Mm-hmm.
So they do a beautiful job of getting our books out there.
Mm-hmm.
When and Where, we have 6 books, 6 adult trade titles in 2022. I think we have 9 scheduled for 23.
Okay.
Children's books, probably like 5 or 6 a year. Put me on the spot here, I should know this. But we have a total of about 35 titles through 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And tell us a little bit about your front list, John.
We do business, personal development, current affairs. About half of our books are business. We have gotten up to some points to about 50 books on the list. Slowed down a little bit during the pandemic. We're kind of in the mid-40s, but we've refortified the editorial department and are going to be getting back up into the 50s soon.
Sorry, just speaking to the mic. How are you both navigating, defiant inflation? I mean, there's a lot we could talk about in terms of how are you as publishers dealing with it, but I'm really curious the kinds of conversations you're having in the fourth quarter about 2023.
Give me a little bit more on that.
So I'm thinking, it's fair. I'm thinking about, HarperCollins announcing layoffs. I'm thinking about Callista Media, for example, announcing, I think they said 70% of their workforce was reduced in the past week. I'm thinking about the rising costs of paper and printing and all of these things that have a lot of publishers, I know, just sort of fretting about. And it's not just publishers. I mean, it's all industries right now. I serve on the board of Pub West, and I heard a publisher say that she's been in the business for 30 years, and she has not seen, I'm trying to think specifically what she said. She's worried, she has an A, B, C, and D plan for 2023 in terms of her concern around sales. So I guess maybe a more direct question is, are there things about your models that make it, I don't want to say easy, but are there things about your models that leave you maybe a little less stressed or less concerned than others, traditional houses or not?
I mean, our books are really beautiful. I'm so proud of the design and the quality of the books, but we have had discussions with a few of the authors about what is the smart format. to put the book out in. We also have a lot of really candid conversations with the consumer through social media. We talk about the rising cost of books. We talk about how precious a book is, and that you are holding years of someone's life and heart and soul on the page, and this is why it costs this much, but this is also why we give it away for free online. So it's just a lot of conversation per book, like what are we willing to invest in this, but the author has, is a big part of that conversation. I mean, our marketing is just telling the story of the company as much as it is of the book. We talk about what's going on with Barnes & Noble and how they are not acquiring our books. We're having a really cool meeting with Target on the 1st about partnering with them to get more of our books out there and talking about them sharing some of the costs of that. So I mean, we're not big enough. I mean, I think that Joanna's going to be able to talk more about on a larger scale. We're not big enough to talk about layoffs or anything like that. That's not going to happen.
How big is your team?
I mean, right now there's like 3 of us. So if you look at our catalog online, I designed that. I'm doing the social media. I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say that, but it's like, that's the way we're doing it. And we're saving all this money. I had a conversation with Cindy Spiegel, who is lovely, and I love her, from Spiegel and Grau, but she said at the beginning, she's like, I don't think you're ambitious. I think that this is impossible. I think you're crazy. And she's like, how can you do this with, like, we have this whole team of this many people, we had to raise this many dollars. And I'm like, because I'm $900,000 of your salary. Like, I'm the social media, I'm designing the children's books, I'm doing the catalog, right? But that's why we're not so concerned. But we are making really, really, really gorgeous, expensive books, and I love them so much.
It's great. It's amazing you have so many books already. It's incredible. So in terms of like what conversations are we having, the pandemic has definitely made us need to be more data-driven. I'm sorry, it's such a boring topic, but it's true. Looking at, when it makes sense to do paperback editions or not, when does it make sense to do new editions or not. Pre-printed case versus flaps, all getting into all the weeds on inventory and inventory management. I've also really been embracing the enduring value of books and pushing back on what I think is a ridiculous sense of undervaluing and underpricing of books in the market. I'm been getting increasingly aggressive about raising prices at reprint. And also ignoring Penguin Random House when they tell me I can't price the book the way I want to price it, and blaming indies for that, which I don't think is true. We spend a lot of time coaching authors on bulk sales. That's a big part of the business book model. Is a lot of it is built on authors being out there training, speaking, coaching, keynoting, and to coach the new authors on, if you're going to get a keynote, make sure that they buy the book to give to every single person who attends. New authors, they don't know how to do that, or they're scared to do that, so a lot of attention into maximizing bulk sales. The advantages of our model and our mission this time, like I said, we could get extended terms from printers. I remember when I just started at Bear in 2004, October, and that's when our New York Times bestseller on Confessions of an Economic Hitman had just hit the bestseller list. I'm in my first management team meeting, and they're like, good news, it's on the list. Bad news, we're out of inventory. Yep. Worst news, we don't have any money to pay the printer for more books. I was like, what? But we went to the printer. It was a printer we'd worked with for years, have really good relationships with, and they fronted us the money. So when you treat your partners well and you don't try to nickel and dime them, and you pay them on time when you can. So that was a great example of that. Our shareholders are really in it for the mission. They're not banging on our door right now, with all sorts of complaints or, not being problematic. The staff are totally in it for the mission. We just had a meeting about how people have left the company over the past. We've had a great resignation, better, move on. And this caused some distress in the company, but I started, saying, well, first, let's start with everybody saying, why do you choose to work with this company? And to a person, it was the mission. They said several things, but everybody said the mission. It's why they're attracted to the company. It's why they stay. It's why they, are willing to take lower pay than tech pay that they could definitely get. And I think we've always been really flexible with staff, even before the pandemic. People worked at home quite a bit. It was not a problem. So when we went pretty much fully remote, I don't think we had any kind of culture shock. So I think that's an advantage. I mean, we still have to work extra hard to keep building community, especially with the new employees. But because we were doing a lot of the things that the pandemic kind of forced on people before to accommodate staff, they've been more willing to stay in challenging times.
Yeah. Let me ask two more questions if we have time. One is about innovation. We're here to talk about innovation. That's really kind of the foundation of this conference. How do you think about and kind of model innovation in your houses? And like, who's inspiring you these days?
So in terms of innovation, transparency is really at the front of that for us. It's that there's nothing hidden, not from our shareholders, not from our authors, our contracts. I mean, you could go onto our website and download our contract, you can see it. Like it's completely transparent. In terms, we've had conflict. It's so funny. I have a Jedi coach, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. She's our coach, and I was like crying because I'm like, our authors think that we have all the money and no feelings, and I have all the feelings and no money. And she said, do you really think you were going to create this disruptive thing with a whole bunch of activists and there wouldn't be conflict? I'm like, I thought we were in it together. So we've had this this conflict, and where when I talked about Hay House, everything hit the fan because they're like, well, you don't say that. Like, publishing paid me. You don't talk about your advances, right? And I welcome our authors to hold us accountable. Everybody, not just our authors, all of our creators. Please hold us accountable. We would love it if you came to us before you go online, but we want to create a culture where there's no NDA, there's no non-disparagement clauses. We want people to feel as free and liberated. And I think there's transparency in creating a real liberatory model. And I don't think that's included enough in the diversity, equity, inclusion model, is this idea of true liberation. Like, you have a voice at the table. We want you to feel free and open. And that's where I want to innovate, because I felt like the day I left Hay House, and I didn't even realize it, but from the assimilation and all of those things that you go through as someone with any kind of marginalized identity or racialized identity, it's like how free I felt the day after I was out of there. And it was like, I want to build a house where everyone feels as free every day.
A row house.
A row house.
Okay, I'm sorry I didn't really do a good job of checking time. Is there maybe one or two questions from the audience that we can take? Okay.
I just shout.
Yeah.
So when you make books available for your backers to read the ebook in its entirety, do you track how sales go after that? Because there are a lot of people that believe that ebooks get distributed, it will actually grow your audience.
I believe that. I believe that as an author. So
can you repeat the question?
so she was asking if we track how giving away the book for free would impact sales afterwards. So we haven't been around long enough to collect that data. I actually don't care. I don't. I want the book to be widely available. I want people to share the book. I want people that have access. I think that people are good. And I think that I think good people will buy our books, and good people will also steal our books, and that's fine. So you can't steal our books, we're giving them away. But so I don't care about that data, but as an author, I've always felt that the more that you give away, just as good marketing, right? People will still buy the book even if they have the whole thing. So I've always released everything ahead of time. I talk about the process. We get permission from our authors. No one said no yet. People yeah, right on, please give away the book. So no, we don't track it. I don't care. I won't be spending time or energy tracking it in the future. But I still think it's really good business that I highly recommend, based on nothing.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else?
Are you going to ask us about the hard parts?
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. So no one has kicked us off yet. Yeah, what are the best parts of being non-traditional and what are the hardest parts?
Great question.
Okay, I think I talked about some of the best parts, how people really pull together when things are challenging, and there's a lot of autonomy within the organization. In terms of, we do a lot of cross-departmental teams to keep the innovation going, the ideas coming up. I'd say hard parts is we have a pretty complicated capital structure, which is getting increasingly complex to manage, and just we'll keep an eye on that. Don't let it get too complicated.
I'll call you.
Yeah. We have a hard time setting some expectations with authors when they go overboard on the partnership thing and start to treat staff like they're their personal assistants. And we have to spend a lot of time drawing boundaries on that. And we've actually put a clause in our contract that says that we can cancel the contract if they harass our staff. So that's good. I'd say actually for me the hardest part is a psychological concept called moral injury, which is this idea that if you bring people in based on a highfalutin mission and get them all excited about that, and then you disappoint them, they fall a lot harder, right? They're very disappointed. Our mission is creating a world that works for all. We're gonna fail. We're not gonna get that all the time. But when we screw up with authors or we screw up with staff, they come back extra hard on us.
The creeper behind you. I'll do this really quick. The best part, well, I don't love writing books and I don't love marketing books for myself. So as an author, it's been really beautiful to be able to be a steward for these other authors and kind of get a little bit of credit. Like I get to be part of this. The hardest part has been, managing expectations, managing the abuses of some authors. It's like, you signed the contract, what happened to you? You turned into a gremlin, right? Like, we are not your personal secretary. Working with activists, working with very incredibly intelligent, well-educated people that have very, very strong opinions, and sometimes we clash about just ideologies and capitalism and all that stuff. So that's been challenging, but also that's just very rewarding and one of the best parts. So there's no bad parts. I love this job. I want to keep it.
Thank you both.